People might have preconceived notions that since our story takes place mostly in the land of the dead, that's going to be a spooky place. Nothing could be further from the truth. We've tried to create a world that embodies everything about Dia de los Muertos that has transfixed people all over the world. It's a land filled with music, full of color, full of dance, and it's celebratory. We all want to know the answer to that ultimate mystery. Is there anything after death? Is there a heaven? Is there a world we go to?
One of the first things we did when we decided to make a film set against this backdrop is to just read.
We read a lot about Mexican folklore. We read a lot about a belief system of what that could be, what that could look like.
Every last thing that we design, every building, every prop needs to be influenced in some way by something that really exists in the world or from the imagination, which is inspired by things maybe that we saw on one of these research trips.
There were so many things that I saw in Mexico that were unique to me. In cities like Guanajuato, the houses are stepped up on the hillside.
There's this really cool tunnel network underneath the city. The way that the tunnels crisscross was completely inspiring.
One of the things that really surprised me when I was on this trip was seeing a cemetery for the first time that wasn't sad. And it was more of a celebration. That, to me, is what was so beautiful to see.
Coming back from a research trip can be very intimidating because we see so much cool stuff. You feel this pressure to try to, how do we put all this into the movie?
It could be city stuff if there's enough.
The big design challenge was the land of the dead, because what does it look like? Whenever you're making up a world, it takes a lot of thought and planning and effort and trial and error to figure it out.
Lee kept talking about images of towers.
There were a lot of concept paintings done before we kind of settled on a look that we were happy with.
First job was to try to model the initial paintings in 3D that resulted in models that were pretty raw and rough. And so we sent images back to the design department, and we went back and forth quite a bit to try to find the model that sort of fit the culture of the film.
And that, combined with the sort of model that Dave Strick made, led to a painting by Ernesto. He took a model that we built and painted on top of it.
I was just trying to find ways that I could create a world built on generations. A lot of that I was trying to pull from personal experience visiting my grandparents in Mexico. What those neighborhoods feel like, how close a lot of those buildings are actually kind of built on top of each other. A lot of that abstract thinking I tried to instill into the actual paintings of what maybe these towers would look like.
At the very base are pyramids. And then you get this pre-colonial architecture that leads to this colonial era to sort of 50s, and then on until scaffolding and cranes on the top where they're building brand new architecture.
That work helped to inform the geography and give us a sense of place, that the whole place actually existed.
Also, when we built the towers, we tried to keep in mind that scenes would take place in them, so we'd create alleyways and stairways and areas that you could potentially film scenes in. There's a scene that takes place in a plaza. There are scenes that take place in a giant hacienda. There's a scene that takes place along the docks by the water towards the base of one of the towers.
We're always trying to put as much time as we can into the sets and bring out the details, and just like everybody just lovingly crafts these. But it's never just to be beautiful on their own. It's always in service of the story.
In all stories, you're trying to understand what are the rules of the world and how do things tick.
The rules of the land of the dead are there are no living things, so there's no trees, no grass.
Trees are sort of metal trees with these bulbs on the end.
People can't really get injured like they were when they were living. Because of that, things don't have to be built to code.
So you get one scene where Hector jumps off the end of a thing, and you're kind of like, and he falls apart, and he goes back together again just fine.
Keep up, chamaco, come on!
But the most important rule is that you have to be remembered.
We designed an entire set around that rule. It's at the bottom of the towers, it's rickety, it's where the people who are almost forgotten live.
You only get to live in that land of the dead for as long as there are people back in the land of the living who remember you.
We knew that we needed to create stakes for this idea of being remembered, and that came in the form of the final death with a character named Chicharrón.
Buenas noches, chicharrón.
I don't want to see your stupid face, Hector.
With this character of Chicharrón, we needed someone who could handle the weight. And Edward James Olmos, we knew he would be perfect for this role.
I'm fading, Hector. I can feel it. I couldn't even play that thing if I wanted to.
That scene lays the important emotional groundwork for understanding visually and emotionally what the final death means.
Where did he go?
No one knows.
And it's heartbreaking, and I apologize to people who fell in love with Chicharrón. But for these characters, being remembered, it's everything. There's something nice about the idea that in the land of the dead, family sticks together.
The scope of the project was so huge that it really couldn't have come from one individual. It had to come from a real collaborative effort.
We care about every last thing, every set, every prop, every character. If we've done our job well, people forget they're watching a movie. They get completely wrapped up in the story and the humor and the emotion. It's real for them.